We're talking about injustice this month, which we've defined as the things in our world that are not right, unfair, or unequal. If you've been the victim of injustices like racism, discrimination, or any kind of abuse, then you know what that feels like. And if you haven't, I want you to hear from a friend of mine who has.
So in this series, we are talking about justice and injustice. So we really want to know your personal experiences. And can you talk about a time when racism felt real and personal to you?
Yeah. Oh, I remember I remember like the one true moment where it like really hit me. I felt like I had many mini moments or many moments maybe throughout elementary and middle school, but I think the one that really hit me was my sophomore year of high school. So it was the beginning of the year, just started going back to start off my second year of high school, seeing friends again, new classes, and just so many things just adjusting back into the school setting. And then we love starting off the fall with homecoming week, one of the best events with the fall. And of course there's a lot of homecoming proposals by many different people, couples, or just people going as friends, etc. But I remember this one poster that so it was a white student asking a black student, and the poster said, "You may be picking cotton, but I'm picking you." Homecoming, and cotton picking was like very racial back in the 1900s, where slaves were just like cotton pickers, all that by white slave owners. And I just remember just thinking about like like I finally like it kind of hit me where it's like I finally am like getting understanding racism where I felt like I didn't learn in my past. And I just look back at my health class when we had a discussion about about like what happened, and thinking back, there's only a couple of us that were black students or students of color, and the main ones talking, but we were also just like noticing majority of our white classmates being silent when it was a moment where that was racist, where you're seeing a racist homecoming poster with your own eyes, and you're not going to say anything or stand up for your friends who are black, that are very hurt, very traumatized, because we've learned this in history books, and it's it's still happening, it's still occurring. And that's just like one of the true moments where it's like it really hit me.
I want to highlight the part of Ryan's story when the homecoming poster incident was discussed in his health class. He said that the vast majority of the students in the class were silent. Can you imagine how alone Ryan must have felt in that moment? With that in mind, I want to tell you a story from the Old Testament of Daniel about 3 friends and an injustice that they faced. There was a Babylonian king named Nebuchadnezzar who was very powerful and had conquered and captured Israel. One day, mostly just to flaunt his power, he built a giant golden statue and ordered everyone to bow down to worship the statue whenever they heard certain music playing. The Bible tells us that there were 3 Jewish men named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were worshipers of God, and they refused to bow down to the statue. So the king, Nebuchadnezzar, ordered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be tied up and thrown into a blazing hot furnace. So here's what happened next. Suddenly, Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, Your Majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men, unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed. and the fourth looks like a god. Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. This is from Daniel 3:24-27. Now, there are many Bible scholars and researchers who have opinions about this story and the identity of the fourth man in the fire. Was it God? Was it Jesus? Was it an angel or someone else? I don't know the answer. But one thing is clear. In a moment of extreme injustice, these three friends were not alone. God did not abandon them or leave them to suffer on their own. And in the same way, you are never alone when you face injustice. Let that sink in. When you experience injustice, you don't have to face it alone. God cared about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and made sure they weren't alone when suffering injustice. And in the same way, God cares about you and doesn't want you to be alone when you face injustice. In my conversation with Ryan, I asked him what advice he had for people experiencing injustice. And here's what he had to say.
What I've learned, especially like since my sophomore year, is that tell those group of people that like this is going on. Like I always think back to high school when I had very, very few teachers that were my support system throughout the trauma of race, of just like racist moments in my high school experience, that they've helped me grow, helped me learn, helped me speak up, and just challenge higher powers in our school. But I think it's that you just find those group of people, and if you're comfortable, just have those conversations. Let them know what's going on. Let them know what you need in order to do better, in order to like feel better and do better, because that's the way we grow and learn, especially in these crazy times.
Ryan said it was very helpful to him to have a few trusted teachers as a support system. He was able to talk things through with them until he felt heard and understood. So if you're experiencing injustice and feel alone, I hope you will follow Ryan's advice and reach out to a trusted adult. Here are a couple of other steps I would encourage you to take. Talk to God. He cares, maybe even more than you realize. Share your feelings of frustration, confusion, or hurt with the God who loves you. Trust that God will send others to be with you. Remind yourself over and over that you are not alone. Consider talking to your family about getting help from a professional counselor or mentor who can help you process the injustice you experience so that you can begin to heal. Some of you, however, may be thinking to yourself, I've never really experienced injustice. Maybe you relate more to the silent students in Ryan's class, or the people in today's Bible story who just stood by and watched the injustice unfold. We all participate in injustice in some way, often by failing to take action when we see it happening. We'll be talking a lot more about that in the next 2 weeks. But in the meantime, I want you to know you can talk to God about that too. In Psalm 139, the writer makes this request to God. Search me, God, and know my heart, and lead me in the way everlasting. Start there. Ask God to help you see the ways that you've participated in injustice. This is so important because the truth is, some of the people you care about most, your friends from school or right here in StuMin, have been on the receiving end of injustice. Let that become personal to you. Next week, we'll hear more about how God may be planning to use you to do something about injustice. Maybe you are the person God is calling to walk alongside a friend, so when they are experiencing injustice, they don't have to face it alone.
There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next to me. There was another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden, where another died for me. There is another in the fire. Oh, my dad left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning, either way I won't bow to the things of this world. And I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a grave that holds nobody. Now that power lives in me, there is another in the fire. 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 And I can see the light in the darkness. As the darkness bows to him, I can hear the roar in the heavens. As the space between resting, I can feel the ground shake beneath us. As the prison walls cave in, nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come what may in this space between all the things unseen and this reckoning,